months ago, in the inaugural race at Loudon, New Hampshire, Bobby Rahal took a commanding lead in the points fight, beating Michael Andretti.
I think we needed to beat Michael today, and we did it.
Since that day, Michael has been a man possessed, grabbing points wherever possible. He has steadily nibbled away at Rahal's lead. At Toronto, he started in row 2, but led every lap to take the win. In each run, Michael's target has been Bobby Rahal's black number 12. His long-term goal, a second straight IndyCar championship.
You know, we gained a few points today, and, you know, that's all we can do is just keep trying to finish in front of him. If we can't win, we got to finish in front of him, and he still has to help us, so he has to drop out of 1.
That help for Michael came 2 weeks ago at Vancouver. Rahal was second, pursued by Stefan Johansson. Rahal's crash left him out of the points and gave Michael a much-needed win. Today, Michael is in the exact same position he was last year, ready to take the points lead and the championship. There is another contender for the series crown. The 1990 champion, Al Unser Jr., the Indy winner, has through guts alone stayed in the fight. At Vancouver, a near flip could not take him out, nor reduce nor dampen his resolve. Later in the race, he drove into and then around to pass Johansson and take second. 3 men with the same vision. The 86 and 87 champion, Bobby Rahal. The defending PPG champion, Michael Andretti. And Al Unser Jr. all fight for the series championship and the PPG Cup. Today, it's the Pioneer Electronics 200.
No doubt about it, it's a great tussle as we move into the last 3 rounds of the 92 Indy Championship. This week's race takes us to the state of Ohio to the very fast natural terrain course north of the city of Columbus. Now, Michael Andretti is enjoying momentum as we head to the climax of the season. Having just signed the Formula One deal at McLaren for next season, Andretti celebrated by claiming his 5th pole position of the season from the Penske pair of Paul Tracy and Emerson Fittipaldi. Now, the departure of Michael leaves a vacancy in the Newman-Haas team. And with Nigel Mansell's decision to retire from Formula One next season, the rumour mills have been running hot. Here's what Carl Haas had to say on the subject before today's race.
I've been talking to a number of people. Yes, I've had some conversations with Nigel Mansell. I think the whole thing, whatever I do, will probably be solidified next week. And I can't really tell you what the team's plans are right at the moment.
Was Nigel's announcement this morning at all a surprise, or were you aware that he was going to make that decision?
Oh, I had some inkling that he might be doing that.
And if you have a list of people as candidates, does he rank #1 on that list of people you'd like to put in the car?
I wouldn't want to comment on it.
Carl Haas really playing the cards close to the chest there, but it really makes for interesting debate, doesn't it? Well, in a week or so, we'll know, but what a fascinating prospect to have Nigel Mansell driving in Adelaide in November and then back for the Gold Coast race next March. That could be something. We'll keep you posted on the developments of that, the ongoing drama. But back to the championship race, and Bobby Rahal has only a 12-point lead over Michael Andretti and a 13-point lead over Al Unser Jr., with Emerson Fittipaldi still in contention, but only just. Okay, let's go to our commentators from ESPN, Derek Daly and Paul Page.
Here's the diehard starting grid. On the pole, it's Michael Andretti, the winner of the last 2 races here at Mid Ohio, alongside Paul Tracy, his second front row start in his last 3 races. In row 2, it's Emerson Fittipaldi, the winner here in 1988, and Mario Andretti, who won this event back in 1984. Row number 3, it's Eddie Cheever, who ran 4th here 2 years ago, and Al Unser Jr., looking for his first win at Mid Ohio. In the 4th row, it's Scott Goodyear, the winner of the Michigan 500, and John Andretti with 9 top 10 finishes this season. In row number 5, Bobby Rahal, a 2-time winner of this event, and Scott Pruitt, who scored 4th place here last year. In the 6th row, it's Danny Sullivan with 7 top 5 finishes in 8 races here, and Raul Boisel. In row number 7, it's Scott Brayton and Rookie of the Year contender Stefan Johansson. Row number 8, Mike Groff in A.J. Foyt's car, and Brian Till. The 9th row, Christian Danner and Ted Trappist. In row number 10, it's Hiro Mashusta and Jimmy Vasser. The 11th row, Buddy Lazier and the 1991 Indy Lights champion Eric Bachelard. In the 12th row, it's John Jones and Jeff Wood. Row number 13, Brian Bonner and Dennis Vitolo. And a car in trouble already. That's Mike Groff. Also, Dennis Vitolo did not start as they have completed 2 laps around this circuit. Remember, here at Mid Ohio, they start over essentially on the backside of this very large racetrack.
And purely done for safety reasons. Mid Ohio, one of the finest road racing circuits in the world. Couple of key areas here. One is the keyhole. It's one of the slowest corners on the racetrack. It's second gear. Then turns 5 and 6. Very heavy braking at the end of the straight. And then an up and downhill left-hander.
Cars lined up, but Nicky Finoro gives them the yellow flag. Was a nice alignment, but I suppose the reason was Mike Groff's car, A.J. Foyt's number 14, sitting in a rather precarious position on the course.
Pure safety reasons. These cars are very fast. The tires are not really up to optimum temperature. And if you have a race car off the track, it's a way too dangerous a situation. They got to go out and pick up Mike Groff and try and get him restarted, hopefully, and he can join the field again.
But of course, these laps, despite the yellow, as you see them string past Mike Groff, they will count. Onboard cameras today, one on board looking over Scott Brayton's shoulder. Michael Andretti, how's this for a new view for you as we look backwards alongside Michael Andretti? On Bobby Rahal, well, we can look backwards through his suspension once again. Of course, that highlighted Stefan Johansson at Vancouver. And then Al Unser Jr. as we look at him head on. 3 of the contenders right there in the fight for the PPG championship. And a tremendous fight it is. So as they work their way around this track, under yellow, counting the very first lap, but doing it under yellow. Fuel window should come at 28 laps, and fuel can be critical here. And in the battle, not only with the drivers, but among the engine marks this year, we're watching an interesting fight between Ford and Chevrolet. Let's go down to Gary Geralds.
Quick update, Paul, concerning Mike Groff. We've checked in with John Anderson, the team manager for the Foyt team. They believe it may be electrical. They don't know for sure. They're obviously very anxious. You talked about fuel and the window it plays at this racetrack. 200-mile race, and the way this track is configured, if you're to make this a 2 pit stop race, you must be very precise in your stops. You've got to go 29 laps the first time, then you've got to go 30 after the first stop, 30 after the next stop. If you don't, it becomes a 3-stop race. For more on the fuel angle, let's go to Jan Beekes further up pit road.
Well, Gary, we often talk about fuel or the lack thereof as a negative, but let's look at the positive. This tends to make it more competitive. The Chevy A is one that tends to have better fuel economy. The Chevy B, as well as the Ford, makes more power but pulls more revs. This may bring it back and make it close at the front. Paul?
Well, they have the 14 car out of harm's way now. In fact, it rolls in the pits as the green flag ready to come out. Michael Andretti surges ahead. Nick Finoro gives them the green flag, and we are underway here in the Pioneer Electronics 200 at Mid Ohio as Michael Andretti receives a challenge from Paul Tracy, but Tracy plays it very careful.
And Tracy almost got caught out, but look at Fittipaldi now. He's the one. Oh, Andretti's on the grass.
John Andretti, the bright yellow car, gets off onto the edge of the grass, and that forces Goodyear to the side for a second. And finally, he gets back going. Now, remember that Paul Tracy drives 2 cars in the season. That second car is one of them. It is the mobile-colored machine and not the number 4 that he has been driving for Rick Mears.
And Paul Tracy shadowing Michael Andretti, another championship contender here, Al Jr., but John Andretti looking to make a statement here in the opening laps.
So Michael Andretti out in front with Paul Tracy, now in pursuit of him as they come across the line on the pit straight and through turn 1 for the very first time in this run here this afternoon. Tracy has been very careful with that car throughout the entire weekend, and now some people are beginning to expect some good results from him. And there is Scott Goodyear as he rolled into the pit. You saw him pushed off to the side of the course, and the indication is he had a flat, and they decided to get that car off the course, get the left rear changed, and get him back in action. Look at Michael Andretti light the brakes up.
And his style is to be extremely aggressive in the opening laps when the track is clear ahead of him. And how hard he drives is reflected by that left front locked up under heavy braking. Remember, they do almost 175 miles an hour, even full of fuel at the end of that back straight.
There goes third place, Emerson Fittipaldi, the other hope for the Penske stable. Mathematically, perhaps still a chance in the championship, but for the most part, They are simply looking for victories out of that race car and out of Emerson Fittipaldi now. Behind Emo, it's Mario Andretti, and Eddie Cheever runs in 5th place. Here was that situation. There's Goodyear Rahal spreading to the outside, them all closing down on Little Al, and John Andretti getting pushed well down onto the grass. Now, how did it look from Bobby's car?
It looked a situation here where Goodyear had no option but to come right across the front of Rahal's car there, or else there definitely would have been contact.
And Rahal's in trouble. Rahal is in trouble. This is exactly what you said could kill a championship for this man, and there is some damage there.
Losing the momentum in a championship fight, and the right front suspension is broken. You can see it on the car. Rahal is out. It's done for the day. It's all over. No points again today.
What terrible luck for the two-time PPG Cup champion Bobby Rahal at a course in which he is traditionally very strong, if not dominant.
And has struggled here all weekend. Only qualified 9th, could not get the car to the way he liked it. He was second fastest in the morning warm-up. But look at this for a sad situation for the championship leader.
Here it was. This is what did Bobby Rahal in as he got very hard into the barrier.
That's exiting turn 1. It's 115 miles an hour at the apex, and it's going to bring out a full course yellow. Hard contact with the guardrail for Bobby Rahal.
Down in the Rahal-Hogan pits, it must be incredible disappointment as they feel a potential championship slipping through their hands. Now Michael can actually take the points lead totally with a 4th place finish or higher here today. That's how they would look if they would end right now. And what ended Rahal's day?
This is turn 1, 115 miles an hour at the apex. But watch the curve on the right-hand side. Right there, mounts the curve, loses control, and plows into that outside guardrail.
So now, let's just watch this and study it and listen. Against the barrier, the day is done.
Well, the genuine draft is beginning to blow through. It's becoming a hurricane in a hurry for Bobby Rahal.
Well, some of the most riveting shots that we see from time to time in IndyCar racing are those onboard camera shots. Jan Beekes now takes a look at how those pictures are brought to you.
The major advances in motorsports coverage has been the advent of the in-car camera. This is an actual camera head that fits inside a housing. Now this housing has 2 motors, the first of which, if you look at these gears, works a tape clear system. In case debris were to get on the lens, it would actually clear it. The other motor actually would adjust the aperture of this small lens. This whole unit then would come in an aerodynamic housing that would go on the rollover hoop, and that would give us the view looking forward on the car. Now this camera has also been developed this year with help from Rahal-Hogan Racing, and that would give us the rearward view right out of the back of the car. Now there's a new camera for this year, and with help from the Gallus Craco crew, this camera now, the reason it's smaller, it doesn't have a tape clear system, it only takes 1 motor. This gives us the view looking back in the driver's face. Now that signal goes down to a control box, a very light control box. In fact, it weighs below 8 pounds. Not only does it process the signal, but it receives remote commands. The signal then goes all the way up to the front of the car to a microwave transmit antenna. But it doesn't stop there. The signal is beamed up through a receive antenna to a helicopter that has to stay hovering above the racetrack for the entire event. It then goes into a microwave repeater system that then beams the signal back down to a truck in the TV compound. From the receive truck, the picture makes its way in here into the control truck, where it's displayed on one of the 68 monitors that director can see. Now, it's as easy as ready 12, take 12. The picture then comes right into your home, but you can see how far that picture has traveled from that little in-car camera into your living room.
There's the onboard camera on Michael Andretti's car, viewed from the onboard camera. And of course, it's not just up to the broadcast sports technology, helicopters, and back down. Then it leaves here. It goes 22,000 miles to a satellite. It comes back down, up to another satellite, and finally to your home. long trip. Let's go to the pits. Carl Hogan, see his reaction.
Paul, we're standing by with Carl Hogan. And Carl, did you speak with him on the radio?
Well, all he said was he's out. And then he said, I guess he spun and got in the grass and tapped the guardrail. So I guess that's all we know at this point.
Now, you had to work really hard in the race because you had some problems in qualifying. What was it that had you so back on the grid that made him have to drive so hard in the beginning?
Well, we had a little problem getting the car set up for the qualifying. And then when we went out with fresh tires trying to get a good lap at the toward the end of qualifying, why the engine had problems with the engine on the first lap out, so we never really had a good shot at qualifying. But we felt good today. The car was set up for the race, and we under full fuel, we ran second this morning, so we're ready to go. I think it's just one of those things. Maybe we're pressing a little hard. Who knows? But we'll be still there. We'll be there.
Thank you. Let's go down now with Gary Gerald, who's with another owner, Rick Gallis.
Well, let's indeed find out how Rick Gallis reacts with Bobby Rahal, the title leader, now by the wayside. No points today. Is that going to impact your strategy at all? As your driver, Al Unser Jr., of course, and Michael Andretti separated by only 2 points coming in.
Not really, Gary. We, unfortunately for Bobby, he dropped out, but the guy we got to chase is Michael, and we got to beat him, and so to stay in front of him because he's tough, and so we're here to win this race, and we're not going to change any of our strategy at all.
Now, let's address some other issues. We started our show with word from Carl Haas talking about the future with his team and Michael's announcement to go to Formula One. Nigel Mansell could be there. A lot of talk about Al taking that spot. Is there any buyout talk?
Not really. Al and I have talked about his future. He's more than just a driver to me. He's a personal friend, and I want what he wants, which is best for the team. That's the main thing, and so we really haven't talked about it much, but our main concern is winning this championship, and we're going to try to focus on that.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Paul?
The green flag comes out at the start of lap number 7. Michael Andretti jumping back to the front of the field, being chased by Paul Tracy. Emerson Fittipaldi third, fourth Mario Andretti, then Eddie Cheever, then Al Unser Jr. running in 6th place. John Andretti is now 7th, then Scott Pruitt, Danny Sullivan, and Raul Boisel rounds out the top 10.
When the momentum begins to go your way, it can easily help you get to another championship, and the momentum is so much swinging Michael Andretti's way now because his opposition, they're beginning to take themselves out, as we saw with Rahal, so making Michael's job easier. But look how wide Tracy goes into turn 11, all the way out to the curve. So Paul Tracy, who's been spectacular in qualifying, almost took the pole, in fact had it until Michael's very last lap of qualifying.
Eddie Cheever looking very strong, showing off to a degree, running in 5th place. Al Unser Jr. just behind him. Cheever showing off because he's looking to impress someone, since it has already been announced he won't be driving for Chip Ganassi next year.
This is turn 1 again. This is where Rahal went off. Watch the curve on the outside. That's the one you have to stay off. The curves are so high, it puts these cars out of control.
One of the interesting things I think we'll be able to watch today, considering the battle at the front, look how wide Al Unser Jr. came off of that corner, is the different styles between Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy. It might be a product of how the cars are handling. It might be the way they drive, but we've seen a very smooth-looking Michael Andretti, and Paul Tracy really seems to be attacking the track with a great deal of verve.
He is attacking the track. The good thing, though, that you see as we watch Cheever again, see, you mentioned Al Jr. earlier in the keyhole. Look how wide he goes up over the top there. But Tracy seemed to be very controlled all weekend here. I think Rick Mears is here very much acting as Paul Tracy's coach.
Watching Eddie Cheever, a battle for 5th place. Mario Andretti just ahead of him, and Al Unser Jr. closing in as fast as he can, remembering that Jr. is now, with Rahal's disappearance in the opening laps and tapping the barrier, a very definite factor in the overall championship. Certainly a lot closer than he was when this race began 9 laps ago. So Michael Andretti jumps from the pole to the lead and is looking strong. Back at the Mid Ohio Sports Car Course, the Pioneer Electronics 200 presented by Budweiser, as we watch Michael Andretti leave this field. No traffic in front of him. He's just completed lap number 10. Thus far in the event, Michael was the fastest driver at 112 miles an hour. Turned on lap number 9, but then Paul Tracy, as they completed lap 10, responded, upping the ante just a bit. So both Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti are running very fast indeed.
Let's go on board here with Michael and just see how difficult a job it is. He's up past the pit straight here. This is the difficult turn 1. concrete patch. Right there, it's very slippery. Look, he slides right off it almost. Long back straight, 175 miles an hour, even in race trim, and then slams on the brakes. You can still hear the bottom of the car rub the ground. Watch his uphill run. And over the top, look at this, over the top, downhill run. Now this is one of the most difficult parts, over the top of this hill when he turns right. Changes here. Tremendous racing circuit at Mid Ohio.
And in running that lap, Michael Andretti at 112.7, the fastest lap of the race. Now let's watch Paul Tracy for just a bit. Watch his style as he attacks what many feel, Derek, is a very difficult course.
It is a very difficult course. Reason being there are double apex corners here, and there are blind apexes over these elevation changes. But Paul Tracy has many, many racing miles and testing miles around here, because remember, he did extensive testing for True Sports in an IndyCar before he got his contract with Penske. You can see here Tracy stayed on the concrete patch. That's the one we saw Michael slide to the outside. Now sometimes there is actually more grip around the outside of those concrete patches, and Michael Andretti likes that more.
Looking back in the field now, there comes Fittipaldi. Here comes Mario Andretti in 4th place, but Eddie Cheever is right there and beginning to challenge the 1984 winner of this race here. So Mario Andretti now having Eddie Cheever work him hard, and again we're looking at two engines identical, two Ford-powered cars.
And Cheever having a very good weekend. He really hasn't had things go his way in the second half of this season, and it really hasn't been Cheever's fault. We saw him fall out of a tremendous race at Vancouver. Got a puncture here yesterday and slid off the road. Didn't do any damage, but he has been basically in the top 4 all weekend here. Good weekend for Cheever.
Let's go pit side, Jan Beekes.
Well, Paul, there's been so much talk this weekend about what's been going on as far as the drivers in the silly season. Of course, Michael Andretti has been right on top of that. Everyone's saying, well, what about the distractions of Formula One? Are you thinking about going to Formula One? He's had so many questions. But, Derek, you know, the time when you're driving actually is when you have the peace, because you're so focused. It's the one time on the weekend you can focus on what you're doing, and actually all the distractions are out of your mind. But I'll tell you what, when that yellow flag came and he knew what happened to Ray Hall, he had time to think about how that's going to help his championship hopes.
It's so much of a tunnel vision type feel for a driver, and it's amazing. These races take 2 hours sometimes. They are over in a flash when you get into that high concentration mode that a driver needs to get into to perform at his ultimate best.
I've been pretty impressed with Michael this weekend. You might expect him to be excited, agitated, certainly pumped up, but the time I've spent with him, he seemed relatively calm and seems really to be at peace with himself. Another goal has now been achieved.
And that is one of the reasons why he is so good. Great athletes have a habit of overcoming adversity and being able to cope with pressure situations without it affecting his performance on the racetrack or on the field.
It was, remember, at this track last year that Michael Andretti moved into the points lead and began his campaign for a championship and the PPG Cup. Is that happening again with Ray Hall out? By the way, the last lap, Emerson Fittipaldi picked up the pace a bit, turning a lap at 113.4 miles an hour as he moves into 3rd place. So Paul Tracy now has 2nd, and Michael Andretti is at the front of this field. We have had one full course yellow, and the race is running now at a record pace. Watching now a battle with Danny Sullivan as he is running in 9th place with Stefan Johansson right behind him.
Johansson only qualified 14, though. He's up on the curves. A dangerous situation for Johansson. We saw what happened to Ray Hall when he did that, but Johansson, we've seen him so aggressive, particularly at Vancouver. He didn't qualify well, and after 2 days of practice, the mechanics stripped this car down to try and find a problem, and the rear upright was where the problem was. Johansson was much happier with the car in the warm-up this morning, and now moving up from his 14th qualifying position, and again, he rides the curve.
He's used that curve, though, throughout the weekend. He's very efficient
You're
at it.
absolutely right. We have seen him use it many, many times. Now, sometimes, if a car is not sprung as stiffly as another one, you can actually absorb that curve and get away with it. In Rahal's case, obviously we did not see that was a possibility, and Rahal flew off the road.
First, the question as we watch Stefan Johansson. Look at the damage to Danny Sullivan's rear wing. It looks like an actual split in the wing.
Yeah, well, that could only have happened if something came off the racetrack and hit it, but there is definitely damage on the rear wicker bill of Sullivan's car, which could actually affect the rear downforce.
Let's see if we can get an update on what the crew thinks about that damage from Gary Gerald.
Paul, you know, fluky things sometimes happen in racing, and this may be one of the flukiest thus far this weekend. They think that Sullivan may have hit a bird, or it could have been somebody throwing up a rock, but somehow, back here in the rear wing, on the wicker bill, this little flap that they slide in here to help create downforce has been damaged. They've had it bent. It's not anything critical, but it could have a subtle impact on the handling characteristics of the race car. Just this little flap, gurney flap or wicker bill on the rear wing.
Just a little tab that runs along the top of the wing helps create additional downforce, and it looks like it just split.
Well, if it was a stone, it must have been a boulder, because there's a lot of damage there. And if it was a bird, he's definitely in kit form somewhere around the racetrack.
Well, Gary called it a fluky. So.
Yes, a fluky bird.
Now, let's keep an eye look at Johansson as he comes in to challenge Danny Sullivan. Danny sweeps across in front of him. Johansson, another one of those drivers that wants to look good in these closing races of the season so that he can create an opportunity for himself next year. He's told several people throughout the course of the weekend that he has at least 4 different opportunities that have been offered to them. Not mentioned by the team, but the indication is that Hall VDS may test him later in the week, and Derek Warwick is here, and they definitely are going to test Derek Warwick at Hall VDS on Tuesday here at this track.
Johansson very heavily involved right in the middle of the rumor mill, but yet again doing an outstanding job in Tony Bettenhausen's Penske.
So at the front of the field, Michael Andretti continues to run and run away, but Paul Tracy has been closing in. With all of these announcements about Michael Andretti, another obvious question. Michael, what are you going to do about the Indianapolis 500?
There is a possibility. I think Ron Dennis had left the door open at the press conference. You know, he actually said that there's a possibility that he would let me do that, and he's actually might be interested in doing a McLaren effort in the next couple of years. So it's possible, but right now, you know, my mind's not on that. It's on these last 3 races, and then I have to start worrying about my testing, and then I'll worry about Indy, you know, a little bit later. But right now, I have to really keep my thoughts straight.
Ron Dennis, of course, running Team McLaren. You drove for him.
I drove for Ron Dennis in his early days. He was known as Team Briefcase because he was so well organized, but he proved to everybody how good and how efficient he could be, because he really has steered McLaren to all those championships, and what a fascination it will be to watch Michael Andretti now come under his wing.
Well, what a fascination it will be to potentially see maybe in '94 Team McLaren come back into IndyCar racing once again.
People ask me all the time, how will Michael do in Formula One? He will be a major star.
So Michael Andretti running at the front of the field, looking back through the field now, and the fight ongoing for 4th place. Mario Andretti and Eddie Cheever and Al Unser Jr. with now John Andretti, that bright yellow car, beginning to close in on this fight as well.
John Andretti came to Laguna Seca, went to Laguna right after Vancouver to test. They had some very productive test sessions there, and I believe it's showing here, because John Andretti having an excellent afternoon so far, hanging on to this Cheever-Al Jr. battle.
As Michael Andretti flashed across the line, completing the 19th lap of this run here. He's led 520 laps of the last 600 run on natural terrain road courses. An awesome figure.
Awesome figure and awesome pictures again from inside Al Jr. I know we mentioned earlier, it is so difficult to make up time on a car ahead of you when sometimes he's only 2 car lengths. But if he doesn't make a mistake, things are so competitive now between these cars, it's very, very difficult to catch another car. But look, under braking, traffic plays a position here.
Traffic very definitely apart as Mario strains to the outside, and they all try to move around the slower car. and finally accomplished that pass. Of course, that was Brian Bonner, who's only driving in his third IndyCar race of his career, and very wisely moved aside, but it gave Eddie Cheever and Al Unser Jr. both an opportunity.
Oh, big opportunity. We saw Mario, all sorts of things went wrong, and I think Cheever got passed by Al Jr.
Al Unser Jr. now we see it. Cheever was over to the left when we saw the onboard camera, and little Al forced his nose inside to the right of Cheever and moved into the position. So now little Al runs in 5th place.
And what I think happened is you could see that Cheever was trying to make a pass on Mario. Look at Cheever. He moves to the outside. Now he's going to go inside Mario. Realized he's stuck, and Al Jr., look at this, round the outside. Very difficult move, and he manages to pull it off.
Off-camber downhill corner, and you really can't tell how downhill it appears to the driver. That was a very gutsy move for Al Unser Jr. Michael Andretti, well, he's still at the top and 6 seconds ahead.
Eddie Murphy, Nick
Andretti, and you can see Paul Tracy is now right there. In fact, Eric, the top 3 have been involved in a speed duel.
They have been trading fastest laps between each other lap after lap, and now look what's going on here. There's almost a 3-way fight. These are very close. Paul Tracy used traffic to inch up on Michael, but Michael is beginning to get loose. We've seen him exit some of the corners under power, and he's got some wheel spin as he slides down the inside of one of Dick Simon's cars.
You know, we cannot ignore Emerson Fittipaldi in the points fight now, because with Bobby Rahal out of the fight in an early collision with the barrier here, taking him out of this race and no points, Fittipaldi now has a little life breathed back into his battle. So Fittipaldi now, as he closes up behind his teammate Paul Tracy, once before Penske has ordered, move over, let Fittipaldi pass. Will that order come out again?
And a frustrating situation. Look at Emerson, 4 corners now, and he's got caught behind Matt Schuster. He lost the toe from Paul Tracy.
Battle for 4th place. Mario Andretti holding off Al Unser Jr., Eddie Cheever, and John Andretti closing in.
You can hear him play with the throttle and jerk up and down on that steering wheel, trying to keep this car under control. But Al Unser Jr. is relentless when he is in pursuit of somebody. Watch the curve on the outside. Doesn't touch it. Al Unser Jr. has never been on that curve hardly all weekend. Obviously, that car does not like riding the curves.
Look at the different approach. Mario Andretti and Al Unser Jr. Mario touched the car right tight to the inside of the keyhole. Stays on that concrete pad, but now Al Unser Jr. is lined up to move to the inside and take him.
He's right under his rear wing. Mario will probably make it difficult. No, Jr. comes down the inside.
Jr. slams down on the brakes. They all but touch. They may in fact have. And Al Unser Jr. takes 4th place away from Mario Andretti.
Almost becoming a trademark of Al Jr. When he makes his mind to go down the inside, he's either going to make the pass or there's going to be contact, or both. I don't think there was contact there, but boy, does he come down the inside with a slice of authority.
We talked at the start of the race about the courage, the raw courage that little Al is using to maintain his position in the championship. There's an example of it right there, locking those brakes down.
And look at Al Jr.'s rear wheel and Mario's right front. That's what almost comes together. But Jr. gets the job done, and now he's after Emerson.
Let's get an update on Mario Andretti's situation now. Here's Jan Beekes.
Paul, just before that pass took place, Mario radioed into his crew saying the car was getting loose. So, in fact, he was starting to drop back in the clutches of Al Unser Jr. because the handling's going off. Of course, they can address that pretty soon here for that pit stop.
How soon, Jan Beekes, do you expect both Michael and Mario into the pits?
Well, they're keeping it a little bit guarded, but we're certainly around the 5-lap zone. Paul?
So 25 laps now complete. Fastest lap of the race thus far at 114.9 miles an hour. And that one run by Emerson Fittipaldi, who has been in 3rd since the start.
Emerson is extremely fast. His car is very good. When we do get to the pit stop situation, it will be harum-scarum time, because the Penske pit is right at the start of the pit lane, and Michael's is at the far end. So it's going to come down to a race between the crews as to see whether Tracy or the Penske crew can get him ahead of Michael, because on the racetrack, he just can't quite get the job done.
There's Mario, the Texaco #2, fighting now an ill-handling car. And And you can see that Eddie Cheever is beginning to take advantage of that fact and closing in.
And you can see within 1.5 laps how much Al Jr. has pulled away from Mario. And you can see, look at John Andretti still hangs on to this battle. But Emerson Fittipaldi now is a long way up the road ahead of Al Jr.
The leader remains Michael Andretti, followed by Paul Tracy and Fittipaldi. You ride now with Al Unser Jr., who runs in 4th place in the Pioneer Electronics 200. Riding now back with Mario Andretti as we take a look at him being challenged at the back. Michael Andretti challenged at the back. Paul Tracy is right there, but they're having to wind their way through traffic, and this is a very critical time. You talk about no mistakes when you're running on an open track. Now it's not only your mistake, it's the other guys.
And Paul Tracy is taking advantage of the traffic problems that Michael is having. Now he's catching and trying to pass. That's Buddy Lazier in the Viper car. Now he's just going to hold him up for a second. That's all Tracy needs to come right up underneath Michael. Oh, he goes around the outside.
And Tracy is right there, too. Very, very dangerous move for Paul Tracy as he tries to stay in contact with the leader, which is very important for him. But what he must assume, Derek, isn't it, that Buddy Lazier saw both of them?
Well, that's the difficulty. Sometimes you move over, you see the first guy. Sometimes you don't see the second guy. So it is a difficult situation as we see Tracy just stick that rear wheel on the curb. Look how close he is now, though.
Some of the crews have already anticipated the pit stops and begun to lay out equipment. Jan Beekes, what about Michael Andretti?
Well, Paul, we expect him here in 2 laps, and they're just a little bit nervous here because that window is so tight. He's actually coming in 1 lap earlier than we might expect. Actually, they're laying out right now, Paul, so I think that maybe he might be just very, very tight on fuel. That might be why Paul Tracy is coming up and gaining on him. Let's go down to Gary.
Interesting, Jan. The Penske team running 2nd and 3rd is at the opposite end of pit road. They're at the pit entrance. They think it'll play to their advantage. It'll be Fittipaldi right here, but here's another plus. There's a vacant pit in between these two. And then as you swing over here, here is Tracy. So if they have to come in on the same lap, they've got a little extra room to maneuver. They think they may be able to get the lead on the pit stop exchange. We'll find out.
Roger Penske's team has set up at the pit entrance. Michael Andretti's is almost at the pit exit, well down the pits. In fact, Roger Penske's team is downhill. You see that little rise over on the pit lane? Well, they're downhill from that as they come out. Most of the good teams want to try to either be near the entrance or the exit.
Exactly. Now, on the racetrack, in clear running, on clear laps, the 2 Penskes are faster than Michael at the moment. That's why you see them close this gap all the time. So this easily could become a race in the pit lane because it's going to be very difficult to get a pass made on Michael.
So anticipating the stop at any time, Michael Andretti again handling up traffic as part of the Newman Haas team begins to prepare. And of course, the other factor here is, do you bring Michael and Mario in together, or do you try to keep them separated by a lap? Oh, look at Paul Tracy. He stays right in contact with Michael through all kinds of traffic.
Exactly, locking up that right front brake as he gets hard down on the brakes to close up behind Michael. This is going to be a tremendous battle, but look at Emerson. Again, he gets a bad run in traffic.
Emerson, though, back in contact now and begins to close in on his teammate, Paul Tracy. So the 2 Penske cars in pursuit of Newman Haas's Michael Andretti, and there goes Emerson Fittipaldi into the pits. And here comes Michael Andretti into the pits as well, over a camera that's buried down in the ground. Jan Beekes.
Michael Andretti brought it in. He was definitely on the gas coming in here, Paul. He locked up the brakes before he brought it to a stop, but he got it right on the marks. They laid out actually a lap earlier. That has to mean they're very, very marginal on fuel. Whoa, got the air jack stuck there. He's underway.
You saw the jerk at the back of the car as they tried to lower it back onto the pavement. And look there, right behind him, Emerson Fittipaldi comes out of the pit. So these 2 cars have pitted. Paul Tracy takes the lead, but he has not pitted. So the battle will end up right back here.
And now the heartbeat of everybody on that crew is at fever pitch because they've just gone through an exercise that they hope and pray goes properly all the time. Both got away with it, but the next one to watch is Paul Tracy to see can he gain or lose during his pit stop.
So at the front of the field, with the first stops being completed, Michael Andretti, Emerson Fittipaldi running together. Here is Paul Tracy, due into the pits at any time now.
Oh, he's stuck behind Brayton. That's going to lose a couple of seconds.
Gary Gerald's right there in the Penske pits.
Indeed, Paul. Emerson was in and out in 12.3 seconds. Interesting. are crewing the car for Tracy. As they make the change of tires, they take on the critical load of fuel, and we're watching the clock. They're now past 13 seconds. They've got to climb up the hill. Wheel spin, and he killed the engine coming off the jack. Critical, tough break for Paul Tracy. They scramble to get the starter back over the wall. The clock's still running at 25 seconds plus. Now they need auxiliary power. This is disastrous for Tracy.
Michael Andretti sweeps back into the lead as Paul Tracy in 28.7 seconds rolls out of the pits after killing his engine. Penske team was right there with a starter ready to get it back. They're always prepared for any contingency, but what a terribly costly stop.
Well, the harum-scarum time usually throws up something, and in this case it threw up a stalled engine by Paul Tracy. You could see in the cockpit he threw his arms up in disgust because he knew that mistake was down to him.
Comparison of the two stops for first and second place. Michael Andretti went in and out in 14.6 seconds. It took Paul Tracy twice as long to get in and out of the pits.
That's an awful lot of time to have to make up out on the racetrack, particularly as now he's going to have to pass some cars to get back up with this leading duo right here.
Remember, we were concerned for Mario Andretti and handling problems. Let's see if we can get an update from Jan Beekes.
Well, Paul, there's more reason for concern now. He came in for the pit stop. Everything was looking good, but the car was still in gear. Couldn't get it out of gear. The rear wheels were spinning. In other words, the clutch wasn't releasing. They had to have him shut the engine down so they could change the wheels. And then, of course, they had to then let it down, refire it. He lost a whole lot of time down here.
So Mario Andretti struggling as well. That's Scott Pruitt that comes up behind him now. The 10 car, Scott Pruitt, has completed his stop and now has moved up into 9th place. Leader of the race remains Michael Andretti after the first stop. Well, you talk about race fans, they're all over the place here. A record crowd at the Truman's Mid Ohio Sports Car Course. And the officials are now discussing the possibility of a full course yellow as Michael Andretti leads this race, followed by Emerson Fittipaldi. Paul Tracy may be about to get a great advantage. 4th place is Al Unser Jr., and John Andretti runs in 5th. The reason for the full course yellow, Hiro Matsushita sitting on the outside of a corner. Car is dead in the water. They have not yet decided to go to yellow. They may be able to pick this car up without going to a full course yellow. But you can see, Derek, it's pretty precarious.
It really is, because the difficulty is it's a right-hander, so when that tow truck pulls him away, he's going to pull him right into the racing line.
And if they would have gone full course yellow, which they apparently, now there's the safety vehicle on the way out to help him. If they had, then it might have been an advantage to Paul Tracy. It won't work that way now. This is Eddie Cheever as he moved around John Andretti and into 4th place, resetting the top of that order. Michael, then Emerson Fittipaldi, then Paul Tracy, then Al Unser Jr., and now Eddie Cheever in 5th.
So we saw Cheever taking back that position that he obviously lost during the pit stops. John Andretti's pit stop was faster, but Paul Tracy luckily did not lose too much time, even though he had over 20-second pit stop.
36 laps complete, 89 laps, the scheduled distance. A magnificent facility on a beautiful day. For race drivers, a very difficult course. Of course, here at Mid Ohio, not only the Indy cars perform here, but almost everything in the broad spectrum of motorsports. So many amateur drivers, SCCA, IMSA drivers, have an opportunity to race here. And I think 201, they all say, boy, this is really tough, but it sure is fun.
A lot of European drivers here in the backup series, the Indy Light Series here this weekend, say this is one of the finest road racing facilities, on par with a lot of the European racetracks.
This was Paul Tracy. Now watch the left rear.
There's his hand, comes up in frustration. He knows that that mistake is down to him and how costly it can be. He still has 2/3 of the race, though, to make up for it.
So just a killed motor in reality, as Paul Tracy in and out in over 24 seconds, very costly for him, and ran him back in the order. He's still in 3rd, but he's 20 seconds behind the fight at the front of the field between Michael and Emerson Fittipaldi.
And you see Michael now coming up behind Scott Goodyear. Scott Goodyear is out of sync on pit stops because of that early puncture. He pitted earlier, now he's completely out of sync with everybody. Goodyear had one of his better qualifying runs here, qualified 7th in a car that he says is much, much better than anything he's had on a road race circuit this year.
We did mention watching Tracy's left rear on the stop. That was because there was a report that maybe it was spinning as he was coming down off the jacks. That would have been a violation.
Yes, and that also could have been one of the reasons why he stalled the engine. But usually, you just don't have enough revs on it when you drop the clutch, and it's very difficult to rectify the situation once the engine begins to die. And also, he's on an uphill run out of his pits, which even makes it more difficult.
I asked Roger Penske about that the other day, and in fact, he said that, you know, I said, why are you downhill? Why didn't you get up by the exit? And he said, well, with as much horsepower as we have, it's no problem climbing that hill, but it could make a difference there.
Okay, the key to the horsepower, though, is you must get those rear wheels spinning. From the time now when the guys pull away, the jack goes down, you've got to light the rear wheel. Now, it is spinning, and he doesn't keep enough power on it. He doesn't keep enough power. As soon as the rear wheels bite, the car is moving too slowly, and it just stalls. There's his hand. Look at the hand. Total frustration. I'm sorry. I made a boob. I was running second. Now my job is even more difficult.
The IndyCar safety team has now picked up Hiro Masusta, brought him back into the pit area where he will be retired and refueled. That is, retired, more tires put on the car. Let's go down pit side, Gary Gerald.
And we see Mike Groff in the cockpit of A.J. Foyt's number 14 car. He tried to leave the pits a few moments ago. They lost their clutch early in the race, Paul. He couldn't get it started. They had to pull him all the way back to the pits. Now they're going to try to make some repairs with a costly delay here for a frustrated but talented young driver.
Derek, this team owned and operated by A.J. Foyt. How can they become a top team in the sport?
Well, one of the biggest names in racing in America. They've had so many drivers. I really believe they need to settle down. They need to decide on a driver and say, hey, come hell or high water, we're going to show some confidence in you. You better do the same for us. And then I believe they have a chance. And I think with Mike Groff, the one they have in it right now, they couldn't go far wrong having a lot of confidence in him, because Mike Groff has shown many times to be well capable of running here in IndyCars.
Now, at the conclusion of 36 laps, the Valvoline race recap with Michael Andretti leading 35 of those. Paul Tracy, of course, had 1 lap in the lead prior to his stop and after Michael's. Average speed at a tremendous pace, 101 miles an hour. It's climbed since then. The track record down at 99.7, so they are flying. And the cars out of the race, most notable, number 12, Bobby Rahal, no points today.
Great shot here of Al Jr. You can see that tear off on his visor. Now, when that gets oily and dusty and dirty from cars ahead of him, he literally tears it off, and he has another clear windscreen to see what's going on ahead of him. But the interesting thing is, look at his arm movement. See how they bob up and down? The other one bobs up and down as the car goes over these bumps, and he tries to keep the car steady. To the outside, it looks very smooth, but you can clearly see inside. These drivers work very hard. Now, remember, they're pulling up to 2 and 3 Gs throughout these corners also. But now, look at Emerson close up on Michael.
Fittipaldi definitely challenging Michael Andretti. Fittipaldi has had the fastest lap in the race thus far on lap 26 at 115.3 miles an hour. He has now made up what distance he lost to Michael and is right there now looking for an opportunity. This course, though, affords fairly few opportunities to pass. One of them, though, coming up in this right-hander.
And it's the Ford engine versus the Chevrolet B. The B engine being the second-generation engine that's been so successful in IndyCar racing. And it's no secret that they are developing a new C. But the B engine is doing a very good job. It's about 3 or 4 races ago that Nigel Bennett said the car is basically unchanged since the start of the year. But we do now have more horsepower, which is making us more competitive.
Wally Reese, representing Chevrolet, told me this morning that the C engine is now very close to reality in terms of getting it onto a dyno, though it may be another month away. And the Rahal team announced today that they would be carrying that C engine. Of course, Chevrolet announced some time ago there was the opportunity for everybody to use the C engine if they so desired next year. So Rahal, for one, has announced that he will be using that motor. So at the front of the field, it is still Michael and Emerson Fittipaldi in very close pursuit as we approach the halfway point. The fight is still at the front of the field in the Pioneer Electronics 200 at the Mid Ohio Sports Car Course. It, in fact, is the only battle in the top 14 positions, and it is between Emerson Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti. from Scott Brayton's car.
Scott Brayton feeling very happy about his IndyCar career. Yesterday, signed a contract to continue his IndyCar efforts with Dick Simon. So that always makes a driver feel good. Amway still backed the effort. They've been very successfully backing Scott Brayton, a very colorful team. And this year, I think it's fair to say that Dick Simon definitely began to nudge that upper echelon of successful teams.
Without question. That car just behind him, Brayton runs in 13th. That car closing is rookie Brian Till. And these two are the only other battle in the field at this moment beyond the lead. That is Brian Till closing and trying to pass Scott Brayton.
Brian Till, of course, running last year's True Sports car with the Judd engine, doesn't have enough horsepower, doesn't have the type of horsepower he needs to be ultimately competitive. But this team in itself is a good story because, believe it or not, he met his team owner, Bob Liebert, when he was an instructor at the Skip Barber School. And then they formed a team that has gone on through Formula Atlantic, Indy Lights, and now into IndyCar. So a very small but closely knit and successful, well-presented team.
Look at Brian reel him in under braking there, and Brian did some incredibly heavy braking. That should give Brayton the advantage on the exit of the corner.
And that's exactly what it does. We see it here. Clearly, the Chevrolet pulls out 3 or 4 or maybe 10 car lengths on Brian Till. What a frustrating situation for Brian Till. Now, here's under braking. See, he's too far away that he actually can't close it all up in one go.
But that's where the gentleness of racing comes in, is it not? That you can come in the corner and jump all over the brakes, but if you can't convert that to exit speed, then you're done.
Exactly.
At the front of the field, looking to convert from second to first with traffic as part of the problem, Raul Boisel moves to the outside and lets Michael Andretti, the leader, in second place, Emerson Fittipaldi, pass.
Michael is superb in this situation, though. He does not wilt under pressure whatsoever. Well, the pressure cooker is being turned up because now you see Emerson beginning to poke down the inside. Now that gives a message. I'm here and I'm fast and I'm going to challenge. But Michael is superb under pressure.
So Fittipaldi now lining up, looking for an opportunity. There are few such opportunities on this tremendous course, a 2.4-mile road natural terrain circuit.
This is a great shot here because look at the rear tires. See the way the car and the suspension moves within the carcass of that tire? The footprint of the tire is on the road, but the car actually moves left and right within that tire. I'm sure Goodyear would love to see that. What a great way to test and see exactly what your tires are doing.
A 1,550-pound race car, not counting the fuel on board and the driver. Lateral G's sometimes is approaching 3 G's lateral.
You can clearly see we did the track back earlier when Jan Bikas showed you the in-car camera. Well, that's it there on the roll bar, which is looking forward. What happened there? Whoa, Pruitt went around the outside of Stefan Johansson.
And very quickly, it makes you wonder if Johansson, did he just get it sideways, or if, in fact, there might be something wrong with that car. Mario Andretti, as he cycles his way through traffic. Gary Gerald, how is the Penske team taking a look at Emerson Fittipaldi's run?
Well, from what we're hearing, the indications are, I think Emo may try to make his run on Michael and go for the lead at this point. So you might want to keep a close eye on what's happening up front. Emerson feeling very good with the race car, from what we understand.
Any projection, Gary Gerald, on what the pit stops may be for what should be the second and last stop in the race?
Well, if they were in at 31 or 32, we would expect that it would be around 30 laps on top of that, so make it 61, 62, and that would leave them with 28 and 29 laps respectively to go.
Let's go down the pits a little further. Jan Bikas.
Well, Paul, we're talking about the pit stops when they changed the tires. You also talked about what was happening when you look towards the back of the car, looking at the tire carcass. This is a new rear tire for this year. They wanted more contact patch here, so instead of making it wider, they couldn't do that because there's a wheel width limitation. They had to make it taller. Now, there's all this talk about Formula One new regulations. How do they play? A Formula One tire now is 18 inches wide. They're now going to come down to 15, which is the tread width of an Indy car. But right now, this tire is measured from the sidewall. This is a 16-inch wide wheel. That means Formula One tires will be narrower than IndyCar tires next year, and I think Michael Andretti will love that one. Paul?
And that new tire rule in Formula One really pleases Michael Andretti because he thinks that will give him an advantage because he has been racing for years on that style or or type or width of tire. He's pleased that they've made the change now.
You know, when they talk about Michael going to Formula One, that certainly works to his advantage. But what they've not yet announced is what they're going to do for an engine next year. Now, especially with Honda announcing that they're backing out of it, as we watch Scott Pruitt and Stefan Johansson as they continue their battle for 8th place. At the front of the field, it is still Michael Andretti. Emerson Fittipaldi, though, is closing and looking to attack. Remember 1989 here at the Mid Ohio Sports Car Course? The Porsche, its first and only victory. Teo Fabi at the wheel. Magnificent day. The team, though, now out of IndyCar racing. And, in fact, we do miss them and their splendid effort, perhaps at some time in the future. But we were talking, Derek, about engines and potential power as we watch Scott Pruitt and Stefan Johansson continuing battle for 8th place. Let's keep an eye on it as Johansson takes advantage of Ted Prappus's position, tries to get the inside, can't do it. Let me get the question out. What engine for Michael Andretti next year?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. There is speculation going on right now that perhaps, I mean, remember, all the Honda Formula One engines are not just going to disappear. They will be somewhere. So Mugen Honda is a separate privately held company that develops Formula 3000 engines. They could supply for an interim year the McLaren. However, there's been speculation that Ford might have an engine. Michael Cranov has said, I doubt it. So at the moment, that's very much up in the air.
Jaguar?
Well, the Ford V12 that was being developed for late this year is around. It has run on the dyno, and there has been speculation that it may be badged as a Jaguar.
Michael Andretti, as he flashes over the line, has clinched the lap leader bonus point. So with the point for the pole, another point for the bonus for leading the most laps, he continues to take points away from Rahal, who is doing very poorly at this point.
And we got a good shot here, and just at the back of the picture of Paul Tracy, but Michael still leads. He's pulling it just a tiny little bit. It takes such a long time to do it.
Johansson as he tries again, and this time he gets the job done, moving inside as Scott Pruitt, and Johansson moves into 8th place. So that battle resolved for the moment, but I don't think Scott's going to let it rest at that.
He tried it one lap earlier, realized the piece of road that he wanted to use, but he wasn't quite close enough to Pruitt. Now he's being held up slightly by Ted Prappus, but a very good move again by Johansson.
A reminder, if you tuned in late and you're saying, why aren't they mentioning Bobby Rahal, the points leader? It's because very early on, Rahal ran over a curb, slid across the track, caught the barrier, damaged the car. He was not injured, but he has finished out of the points.
Now look at the traffic jam that Johansson has to contend with. And here's the leading group right behind them. They're also going to have to contend with that traffic jam.
So now traffic lies ahead of everyone that matters. And look at this. Michael slows it down, and Fittipaldi takes the lead. Something's wrong with Michael. Another important change in the points fight. Michael Andretti pulls it off of the race course. What could it be? Has to be engine.
Has to be mechanical. A disaster again for Michael. Exiting, we watched Sandy in total disgust. Exiting turn 1. That's where Rahal went off earlier. Nothing he can do. He's already thrown the steering wheel out. There's a long cord for the radio. Michael's day is over.
Well, that wave that started this weekend has now crested and lapped up on the beach and left Michael Andretti high and dry.
Now the championship fight opens up even further because Rahal gets some help, but Emerson is now in a very commanding position.
Let's go pit side, Jan Beekes.
Michael Andretti has been on the radio, Paul. He called in. It was the engine. He's out, and of course, they're down here just wondering what's going to happen the rest of the year.
At Indianapolis, now here, it's suggested that at least twice, possibly 3 times in the pursuit of any championship, you'll have some sort of catastrophic failure. Michael's now had 2 with the engine.
Well, it's hard to believe that the 2 championship leaders are both out of this race in unusual circumstances. Michael particularly when he was in such a dominant position, and Rahal, of course, because of the crash earlier. Look at this, Michael. Dejection, all he can do. And we saw him earlier on go to the back of the car. Maybe there's telltale signs of a mechanical breakage, but the bottom line is no points today.
Emerson Fittipaldi threading his way now, hopefully carefully through traffic. What does this do to the rest of the points fight? Paul Tracy still lies in second. There's Paul Newman. But Alan Alonser Jr. sits in third, and that should put him back into the points fight very solidly as well.
And Alonser Jr., we haven't seen him for a little bit. Car number 3, about 5 laps ago, he was the fastest car on the racetrack after that first pit stop. So Al Jr. again is relentless. Now his pursuit is Paul Tracy.
Let's go pit side, Gary Gerald.
Paul, a couple of things. We were talking with Rick Gallus just before the development with that Michael Andretti going out. Gallus said, we need a yellow. We're as fast as the leaders. We can race with them if we get a chance to get up there where we can challenge. Fittipaldi was getting ready to pounce. He had radioed in, wanted permission to richen up his fuel load. The fuel economy has been good enough thus far for this team through the race that they said, okay, now he can take a little more conservative approach with the lead that he has.
So watching Emerson Fittipaldi, but perhaps more important is the run of Alonser Jr.
We see Stefan Johansson again, hard at work trying to go down the inside. Look at this traffic jam. That's Paul Tracy, slices down the in. No, it's Danny Sullivan. Those cars are very similar, both blue, both white right. He slices down the inside of Ted Prappis. We haven't seen Sullivan very much this afternoon, but currently he's running in 9th place.
So keeping an eye on the Penske powered by a Chevrolet, Emerson Fittipaldi running at the front of the field, and with 14 seconds over the second place car, his teammate Paul Tracy. Tracy this weekend, there he is. His style seems more controlled.
We spent a lot of time with Tracy on camera during the qualifying and practice runs, and unlike Elkhart Lake, Paul Tracy was very controlled this weekend, didn't really put a wheel wrong, was spectacular in qualifying, and I believe they are definitely sitting him down and coaching him along, saying that, Paul, you have the drive. We have a contract with you. Just settle down. And mainly, they use Rick Mears as his father figure and his coach.
But don't you think it's even more than that? It's his ability to react to that kind of coaching, to in fact alter what he believes to be his style, to shuffle off all of the criticisms and everybody saying, oh, you crashed again, waiting for Paul to... I mean, he's done a great job of just ignoring that and paying attention to the business at hand.
Exactly. And this man is spectacular, and he's very, very fast. And I think today is showing, and particularly where he's running now, just how good and consistent he can be.
54 laps are now complete, and Emerson Fittipaldi, look at the tremendous lead he has as 54 laps are complete. Pit stops anticipated about 60, 62, somewhere in there, but he may have an ability to pull enough distance to stop, make his pit stop, and continue in the lead.
Mechanically developing this car all along, but if the race is to end now...
This is the real story. Al Unser Jr. would lead the points fight. Bobby Rahal already out of the race with 162. Michael Andretti 152. Fittipaldi at 145. All of those on a single race win could move to the lead in the points fight. Scott Goodyear mathematically, of course, is out of it.
Mechanical developments on this Penske. One of them has been this traction control unit that we dealt with at the last race. I asked Alan Mertens, who also uses it on the Galmer car, how good it is. It actually kicks in 8 different times during the lap. So the traction control, a big benefit. We said earlier on the frustration, then a driver totally takes the steering wheel off, throws it out of the car. The reason they take that off is he actually can slip out of the car because his knees has to go over the fire extinguisher that's under his knee, so he can't get out of the car with the steering wheel on.
Let's go pit side in the Penske pits. Gary Gerald with a very special guest.
Well, the man behind the sunglasses is Rick Mears, and it's been, I know, so tough this season to be on the sidelines. Derek Daly and Paul were talking a few moments ago about you serving as a coach now, particularly for the young driver Paul Tracy. Are you enjoying this role, and what kind of things are you trying to relay to him?
Well, you know, I think I'd rather be in the car as far as enjoying the role, but, you know, basically we just want to help in any way we can. If I see something that, you know, I feel that he could maybe do a little differently that might help, then I suggest it. You know, mainly just a little support, you know, give him some support. If he has any questions to ask me, you know, we just work together. That's part of the team aspect, and that's basically what we're doing.
Now, let's ask you about the wrist. You got it in the cast down here, and they've had the surgery. Is there any opportunity that you may get into a race car before the season is over?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, we're still going to be in the cast for another about 3 weeks. And then they'll pull the pin out, and when they take the cast off, put it back in a brace for another 3 or 4 weeks somewhere in that area, and then we'll start working it. So more than likely, we're through for the year.
I hear you may drive the pace car for the Marlboro Challenge.
We may do that for the Marlboro Challenge, yes.
All right. Thanks, Rick. Paul?
We gave you a glimpse there of the x-rays of Michael's wrist or of Rick's wrist as Michael walks his way back to the pit area. And of course, the thing is that Rick has to totally avoid using that wrist of all. That means no golf, no water skiing, all of those things that he truly enjoys. We watch Paul Tracy. Now remember, he came off the pit stop 22 seconds behind the leader of the race. He is now 15.3 seconds behind Emerson Fittipaldi, so Tracy is steadily catching up. And just behind him in third place is Al Unser Jr. He runs about 2 seconds behind Paul Tracy.
And this is Al Unser Jr. style. If you're not leading, if you're second or third, to be relentless, make no mistakes, and get the absolute best and maximum out of the car. And he has a habit of crawling his way up to the people ahead of him.
Emerson Fittipaldi's crew prepared now to go to work on Emerson's car. That's Rick Reineman, the chief on that car, will change the right front tire. They look right around the corner. They don't have much warning other than the two-way radio to tell them that Emerson Fittipaldi will be on the right way in. Here he makes his turn in, and Fittipaldi just may elect to stop this lap with a 15.2-second lead over the second-place car of Paul Tracy. Obviously, the Penske team is going to stagger the stops between their first and second-place cars.
And the pressure situation is not quite as much as it was earlier when they were racing against Michael, even in the pit lane. With a 15-second cushion, you can take just an extra second or two just to make sure everything goes according to plan.
A time of terrible tension for those members of the pit crew that have to go over the wall because they know their driver has done a great deal of work to get to this point, and they could lose it for him. Here's Gary Gerald.
We watch with the crew. He sneaks around the corner perfectly on the mark. The veteran driver who is looking for his 4th win this year. The crew has told us there'll be no changes on the setup. They make the precautionary move to clean the air intake around the radiator, make sure there's cool air flowing in there. He's rolling. We've got him in right around 15 seconds. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Al Unser Jr. came in just ahead of you, Gary. They know that this car is handling great, but they lost time early in the event. Everything is coming down to how fast they can make this stop. Those tires were on quick, but they can't do it. Now the fuel's in. He's out of here. Very, very quick stop.
They changed the tires faster than they could get all of the fuel flowing into the engine. So now Al Unser Jr. roars back into the action. Paul Tracy, of course, took the lead as Emerson Fittipaldi came in for his stop. Paul Tracy due in yet another lap.
And it's on these out laps from your pit stop that you need to be right on top of your game, because the tires are cold, and the faster you can push it, you can possibly make up time on somebody else who doesn't push it that hard on the out lap.
Paul Tracy, the leader of the race. Boy, look at him lose the back end of that car.
Oh, that car is loose and oversteering, but however, he will get a new set of tires with the next fuel load.
Is that telling us anything about the racetrack, though?
Well, they say that this racetrack does change quite a bit. If anything, it's getting slippery.
He's in for his stop. Let's go back to Gary.
Well, they had disaster the first time they were in here when they had to kill the engine and they didn't get the clean getaway. This time they're looking for what they hope will be a routine stop. This young Canadian driver who's been so impressive, trying to be patient as he waits, getting that full complement of fuel. Again, it seems like such a long wait. Now he's rolling and away, 15.3 seconds.
So Paul Tracy makes his stop as Emerson Fittipaldi comes across and picks the lead of the race up once again. Paul Tracy comes back out the pits and back up to speed. Eddie Cheever stopped on the racetrack, again a precarious position. The IndyCar safety team is on their way to try and assist him, and no indication of a full course yellow. But Derek, that's at a critical corner.
Critical corner, that's turn 6, but we didn't see the record truck, we didn't see a full course yellow for Hiro Matsushita. We saw Al Jr. just past the tow truck, so I think they'll just try and keep the track hot and just try and tow him back.
And look at this, Paul Tracy with Al Unser Jr. right behind him and beginning to challenge for second place. Paul Tracy trying to hold off little Al on the fight. And Paul Tracy now has little Al poking his nose right and left and everywhere he can.
Warm tire situation for Al Jr. Tracy is just out of the pits. Both of these know that exact situation, so Tracy will do everything he can to hold off Al Jr. by driving defensively if necessary.
Al, on the other hand, knows that there is an opportunity to be had if only he can get up and get alongside Tracy and take advantage of the reduced traction for the moment.
Nobody takes opportunities, or snatches them, should I say, better than Al Unser Jr. But he must get close enough to Tracy, particularly on the run out of the keyhole if he's still behind him, and try and outbrake him at the end of the long back straight.
Remember, for Al Unser Jr., the car he drives is the Galmer, brand new car this season, a teething season the entire way, but look, it has carried him to the Indianapolis 500 win. It has carried him to the top of the points order right now. So Alan Mertens and the crew that put the Galmer together have to be very pleased with the development of that machine thus far this year. Here at Mid Ohio, it is still MO out in front, 15 seconds ahead of Paul Tracy and Al Unser Jr. Clock on the 405 freeway. Al Unser Jr. is climbing all over the back end, and Paul Tracy has several cars in front of him, notably Stefan Johansson and Scott Pruitt. They are battling position, while at the same time Tracy is trying to hold off a charging Al Unser Jr.
Al Jr. is right behind Tracy. This is the run that he needs to try an outbraking maneuver at the end of this straight.
But it's also a place where one must be careful, because that is a fight for position that is just in front of them. They're not necessarily going to give way. Paul Tracy gets around Johansson. That cuts him off from Al Unser Jr. and gives him a little breathing room for the moment. But look at little Al as he moves to the outside and finds some racing room, but still has to stay behind Johansson.
That's the key for the leader of the race. Put the traffic between yourself and the pursuer. Al Jr. knew that, tried to do what he did to Cheever earlier, go around the outside. Oh, Johansson gets it sideways. Tried to go around the outside of Johansson at the top of the hill, and he didn't pull it off.
And what about in that computer-like mind of Al Unser Jr.? Is he registering that 16 car and saying, oh no, this is the same guy that got in trouble with Bobby Rahal 2 weeks ago at Vancouver. I've got to be careful of this fella.
He might well do that, because he knows Johansson is racing Pruitt. Now, he's lost a little bit of time because he had to move over and let Paul Tracy through. But look how much Al Jr. has lost in one single lap because of traffic.
So Paul Tracy with some breathing room for the moment. It also has helped Scott Pruitt in that ongoing battle for 7th place with Johansson. Al Unser Jr. now will take the opportunity as he runs out of the keyhole and down the long backstretch to move inside, hopefully without incident, and get back in contact with Paul Tracy. But at the same time, Tracy is looking for an opportunity to get past Scott Pruitt.
And Pruitt chops the nose off Tracy as they turn into that long right-hander at the end of the straight. That's what Al Jr. needs. He needs a little bit of help in traffic now to get Paul Tracy back to him a little bit.
So Paul Tracy and Al Unser Jr. are back in contact. Brian Till, quick little spin to the 24 car and off the race course. Doesn't look like any damage. Should have been able to get that back in the fight.
That was turn 10. Just how good those tire barriers demonstrated again. No damage on the car, and he was able to drive the car out of there.
Al Unser Jr., you remember at Vancouver 2 weeks ago? Al Unser Jr., there you're on board with him. Rolled that car up. It looked like a jet fighter going into a full roll, brought it back down on its wheels into a tire barrier. No damage. He goes on and finishes in second.
Never phased him one bit, and it's a credit, I think, to the designers of that car that they built it strong enough for Al Unser Jr. to be able to abuse it the way he did in Vancouver.
I haven't asked little Al if he had his eyes open or closed when it started that roll, though.
His eyes are open now, and they're big, because all he sees is that Mobil 1 Penske right ahead of him. Now Tracy has the ideal situation again. He has another car between himself and Al Jr.
Let's go to Jan Vikas in the pits.
Paul, we checked in to find out what happened to Eddie Cheever. Remember we talked about that small pit window? He missed it. He ran out of fuel. They had to tow him back into the pits. They've now fueled it. They now put tires on, but of course, he lost a couple of laps. You just can't cut it that close. Paul?
And in doing so, Eddie Cheever fell out of the top 10 down to 13th position. The battle still remains Paul Tracy, Al Unser Jr. Benefit going to Emerson Fittipaldi, who is now a full 16.7 seconds ahead of the second place car of Paul Tracy, and the race is running at a record pace. Paul Tracy just moved around Danny Sullivan. Sullivan is running in 6th place as Tracy follows Emerson Fittipaldi up through the field. Only 4 cars run on the lead lap. John Andretti, the last of those, as we take a look once again at the interval. 89 laps the scheduled distance, 68 laps complete. The record of this race, 99.7 miles an hour. Right now, Fittipaldi is averaging 105.5 miles an hour. He's shattering the track record.
And it took Paul Tracy a full lap to get by Danny Sullivan. Now it's Sullivan's teammate, Al Jr., trying to get by. I don't think Sullivan, being a teammate, should hold Al Jr. up for too long because he knows he's in pursuit of Tracy. But I have to say, Tracy, as the laps goes on here, is having by far his best weekend in an IndyCar because there is no mistakes and he looks in total control all the time as we see Sullivan move aside and let Jr. go.
So Al Unser Jr. now back in pursuit of Paul Tracy. Paul is about a second and a half ahead, but little Al has been able to make up distance without too much difficulty when he is running in the clear on this circuit.
Well, Johansson still in a tremendous fight here with Scott Pruitt. It's so difficult to make the pass here. Up over the top, almost impossible to do it here. So at the end of that straight, Johansson tries to outbrake him. But again, Pruitt hanging on and not allowing him to pass.
Fight remains at the front of the field. Here is John Andretti. He runs in 4th place. Looking very good here today. Of course, the indication is at the end of the year, this is probably not his ride.
Well, a lot of speculation. Derek Warwick, you mentioned earlier, will test this car here Tuesday and Wednesday. Where John Andretti will go, nobody knows. But however, having one of his better days this afternoon of this season.
John Andretti, too, something that he is looking at is perhaps a berth in the Marlboro Challenge, as he almost loses the car there. So with Eddie Cheever no longer a solid contestant in that, if he can stay up in the points, then he can find himself with the last position in that all-star race. Let's go to Jan Vikas.
Oh, talking about John Andretti, he has something different than any of the other competitors. Here's a standard Lola brake caliper. It says 6-pot. Look inside, you see 6 pistons there. This is what they're running. They're running what's called a Willwood. This is made here in the United States. It's named after William Wood. And they think this really gives them an advantage in braking. See how it's so shiny and everything in there? That's actually to reflect the heat so that he doesn't lose brakes towards the end of the race. And they really feel, John says, he thinks it really helps towards the end. Of course, now is when it would pay off.
John Andretti staying in contact with the leaders, running in 4th place. He is 33 seconds behind the car in front of him, which is Al Unser Jr., and well behind the leader of the race, Emerson Fittipaldi.
Difficult situation for a driver to be at a race weekend when he knows there are other drivers eyeing his seat. You have to put that out of your mind and just get on with the job at hand, which is what John is doing.
The battle between Scott Pruitt and Stefan Johansson, with Raul Boesel closing in as well. It is a battle for 7th place. Scott Pruitt, True Sports has already announced that at the end of this season, their team will, for all effective purposes, the equipment be sold to the Rahal operation, bringing it back to Columbus, Ohio, not far from here. And Scott Pruitt will also be looking for a ride as well.
And Scott Pruitt, believe it or not, I was shocked to hear this, is actually considering a NASCAR offer. So Scott Pruitt may be lost to IndyCars, which would be a great shame.
So at the Mid Ohio Sports Car Course, there's Emerson Fittipaldi. The Penske cars run 1 and 2. Is it a Penske weekend? Remember, Rusty Wallace won last night at Red Pioneer Electronics 200, presented by Budweiser. The Mid Ohio Sports Car Course, Lexington, Ohio, about 55 miles due north of Columbus. Emerson Fittipaldi is leading by a full 18.5 seconds now.
And a perfect situation for Emerson in race condition. Definitely overshadowed a little bit during practice and qualifying by his younger teammate, Paul Tracy. But the master is taking control on race day.
The captain, Roger Penske, as he moves back and forth between the pits for his 2 cars. The whole championship fight for the PPG Cup taking an entirely different complexion here today. Bobby Rahal falls out very early in the running, and then Michael Andretti suffers an apparent engine failure at the midway point in this race, just beyond that point, giving the lead over to Emerson Fittipaldi, and in doing so, changing the whole complexion of the points battle. At the moment, Al Unser Jr. is at the top of the order, followed by Rahal, Michael Andretti, and Fittipaldi, and all 4 of those names are very much in the fight.
And Al Unser Jr. sneaking up behind to Ray Hall to try and grab this championship away from him. And of course, Ray Hall and Michael not in a position to do anything to ward off his advances right now.
During the last season, both Michael Andretti and Al Unser Jr. were looking toward careers in Formula One. So we asked Little Al if he feels frustrated with Michael's accomplished career move.
No, there's no frustrations at all. I think it's great. I congratulate Michael, and you know, I hope he goes fast, and I'm sure he will. He's with a great team, and he's a great race car driver. So I do think it's great that you know, one of us were able to go and get a deal done, and so you know, I feel that the IndyCar drivers, you know, Michael and myself are very capable of driving those cars over there and doing it well, and now with Mikey signing that deal, yeah, it's going to be proven.
And of course, in all the breaking news in racing this weekend, Nigel Mansell announcing, at least for the time being, his retirement from Formula One, making himself, in fact, directing himself as available to take a position in the Indy cars. Much speculation that that might be Michael Andretti's seat, but it could also be Al Unser Jr.'s seat. A lot of talk here this weekend that Little Al might find a way to buy out of his contract with Rick Gallis and move over and take the chair being vacated by Michael Andretti.
That is a strong possibility, and you only get smiles when you ask Carl Haas about a situation like that, or even Rick Gallis. I don't think either party really knows yet, but Al Unser Jr. and Formula One, believe me, he is very disappointed that his Benetton test did not turn out to be the full test that he wanted, and he really wanted a confirmed offer from Formula One and be over there with Michael.
But that disappointment gives way to, for the time being, at least a points lead. Much of the decision-making will lie with that man, Rick Gallis. They're good, close, personal friends. Rick wants the best for Al Unser Jr., but he also wants a successful race team. It could make for some tension.
The interesting thing with Rick Gallis is he does want the best for Al Jr., but he also wants the best for his own successful race team. So if he felt Al Jr. was unhappy, wanted to go to another IndyCar team, he's actually prepared to let him go and do it.
Al Unser Jr. once again reeling in Paul Tracy, and the ongoing battle between Stefan Johansson and Scott Pruitt for 7th place continues.
Johansson being relentless here, worked so hard on this car with a no-grip situation all through the practice and qualifying, and then last night when they found the upright problem, basically they had to guess at a setup. They have an engineer called Tom Brown who comes over every race from Poole in England to work with this Bettenhausen team, and he's been doing a very, very good job.
You can see just behind this fight from time to time, Raul Boisel, who has stayed steadily at the helm here, driving his Dick Simon car, and runs in 9th place. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
You're looking at Scott Goodyear. He's in the pits, and they have some sort of gearbox final drive problem. You can see they're working back there trying to shake it loose, and they're also working inside the cockpit trying to free it up. As soon as we find out, it looks like it's stuck in gear. That looks like, oh, the steering wheel is coming out. Looks like he's done for the day. 5th in the points, and then no points today. Paul?
Bad news for Scott Goodyear. But the presence of Scott Goodyear and Paul Tracy has electrified not only the Indy cars in the United States, but in Canada as well. Teresa Fittipaldi keeps track of her husband, who leads now by 17 seconds. So Al Unser Jr. closing in now on Paul Tracy, though not yet in contact. We mentioned the Marlboro Challenge to be held at Nazareth, Pennsylvania International Raceway. Here's the field, the way they will line up. These drivers all in as a result of poles and wins in this season. And the only position yet to be determined is 10th. And it looks now like that's an absolute shoe-in for John Andretti.
You can see Tracy now trying to put a lap on Mario, and Al Jr. seems to be getting a better run in traffic. But you know, I don't think Paul Tracy can take much of a chance with traffic because of the incidents he's had earlier in the year. I think he's got to be super careful.
So fighting the wheel, fighting the car, Al Unser Jr. trying to catch up as best he can to Paul Tracy.
Here's an opportunity here under braking.
One of the few opportunities on the course, but Mario Andretti sits just in front. Still they're going to try. Both of them called wide on Mario Andretti. Paul Tracy gets past Al Unser Jr. The car now skating for him. Tries desperately to get around Mario Andretti as well. Can't do it. Paul Tracy is pulling away.
Paul Tracy knew exactly where Al Jr. was. He knew he was stuck right up under his rear wing. So he moved to the middle of the road, and Al Jr. only had one option to try and go around the outside. It's almost an impossible situation.
Here's the situation again.
Tracy goes to the middle. Al Jr. is forced to go to the outside, and Tracy rides him all the way down and slices down inside Mario, catching Al Jr.
Good piece of driving by little Al, though. He almost got wheel to wheel with Tracy and was looking for room, had to get hard on the brakes. Let's go down to the Penske pits once again.
Roger, you're keeping a close eye on the battle as Paul tries to protect against little Al. Are you able to tell him anything? Are you coaching him through these final laps?
Well, I'm just trying to tell him to keep it on the road because those points are important to hold Al back on the championship. But most important for Paul is to finish this race. And he's got 7 or 8 laps to go. He's done a good job. Unfortunately, we stalled it in the pits here. But again, we'll see. It's a long way to go.
Now, you were in Richmond last night. You saw your driver, Rusty Wallace, break through and get the NASCAR win. This could be a doubleheader weekend because Emerson is looking very strong.
Well, I hope this conversation isn't bad luck.
All right. It's been over 20 years since the Penske team went back-to-back. Mark Donohue, Trans Am, then they followed it up the next day with a big win. They're hoping they can do it here this weekend, Paul.
Gary, I wouldn't want to stay in those pits in case anything happens to these first 2 cars. I think Roger messaged you very strongly there. 8 laps to go for Paul Tracy as he comes on to the pit straight once again, trying to chase Fittipaldi, though probably not even that any longer, simply to hold position.
Exactly, but look at the breathing space he has now. It took Al Jr. a long, long time to get past Mario, who may be his teammate next year. And now Paul Tracy has a lot of breathing space.
At the front of the field, it is still the 5-car Emerson Fittipaldi. 16.2 seconds ahead of the 2nd place car, another Penske of Paul Tracy. The rest of the front of the field running static, no one in contest.
Emerson does not make mistakes in situations like this, so it's only a mechanical failure that could possibly pull him away from another victory, which would be number 17. Emerson already has more wins in IndyCar racing than he had in his illustrious, successful Formula One career.
Emerson Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti climbed on an elevator to go to a gathering here at the track on Friday. And I was talking to Michael, and Michael didn't see Emerson get on board the elevator and kind of ignored him. And Emerson said, "Oh, you're in Formula One already."
The arrogance level has to go up about 3 or 4 notches.
Now taking a look at that battle for 7th place, Scott Pruitt, Stefan Johansson, and Raul Boesel. They have all closed within striking distance of one another and have begun to test one another as they go on to the pit straight. A good place for closure, and then the key passing area on the long straight after the keyhole.
And Boesel has spent almost the whole race trying to catch this group. Now, there's not much time left to make a challenge, but he has spent almost every lap inching ever closer to Johansson, and it's only now that he can make this a 3-way battle. Johansson also will see him in his mirrors.
Raul Boesel, a Dick Simon car. We've talked about Scott Brayton, re-signed, locked in for next year. What is Raul looking for?
Well, I don't really know. Boesel has this ride, one because of, by chance, because of the Indianapolis problem that happened to Matt Schuster, but then he also managed to bring along some Brazilian backing. Very much that dictates what happens to a driver, so if Boesel can continue with that Brazilian financial backing, I'm sure he'll stay with Dick Simon.
Interestingly enough, an intense interest from Brazil because of wins with Fittipaldi and races like today, also because of Boesel, but not only a live television coverage going to Brazil, but around the world. And it's probably appropriate that we say hi to our friends at Sky Channel in the United Kingdom who keep track of the Indy cars late at night on Sunday, watching these races. Many of them staying up, some of them even saying, "Paul, could you make the races earlier? Because I'm pretty tired when I get to work in the morning." I don't have that kind of power. Fittipaldi still out in front. At us 4 laps to go at the Mid Ohio sports car course. He is a full 13 seconds in front of his teammate Paul Tracy. The battle between Pruitt and Johansson as Johansson is able to get inside Pruitt. Can he hold on? place. And there is now, as we look at the pass a little, and he gets him, I think it's past Danny Sullivan. Now that's an ongoing battle that has seesawed back and forth there. Johansson is now becoming very definitely a force here and has moved up to 6th place.
And Johansson has spent almost half of the race trying to make some of those passes. He's a bit like Al Unser Jr., relentless, and eventually takes the positions.
Now Scott Pruitt finds himself in a battle with Raoul Boisel and Danny Sullivan. A continuing battle. It's actually revolving 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th place, and is the only fight at the moment on this circuit as we go into the closing laps with Emerson Fittipaldi, the leader, having completed 86 laps of the 89-lap scheduled distance.
And this is a really good fight here. There's championship points and a lot of money differences between these positions here, so Boisel could do himself a lot of good if he could make 2 passes, but Pruitt hung on for a long time in front of Johansson. But look at Boisel.
Boisel now takes the move on Scott Pruitt, gets inside him, holds the position, and is able to get him. That's a very difficult pass there.
Well, Pruitt tried to stay with him all the way around the outside, but you could see Boisel inched his way past as he got past the apex, and eventually Pruitt realized that all was done, that I wasn't going to be able to hold him up. But now look at Boisel coming on really strong. It's outside Sullivan.
Boisel challenging Danny Sullivan, and around him now takes 7th place.
For the pole in less than a lap.
In each of the last 7 World Series, the team that has won Game 1 has also won Game 2. So that recent history is on the side of the Atlanta Braves tonight as well. We mentioned John Smoltz's experience in big game situations, and prior to this start, we asked him about that.
I've always believed as a kid that these are the games that I actually love to pitch in. I don't look at them as total pressure situations, not life or death. I just enjoy it, and I'm fulfilling a kid's dream. And I think that approach really helps me relax and go out and do the things that I'm capable of.
And he's capable of quite a bit, as the numbers indicate. He was the most valuable player in the LCS against Pittsburgh. And by winning that award, he earned himself a $50,000 bonus as an incentive clause in his contract. The umpires working the ball game tonight. Behind the plate, Mike Riley of the American League, Joe West from the National League at first base. The American League's Dan Morrison at second, Bob Davidson at third, John Shulock in left field, and Jerry Crawford, last night's home plate umpire, has the right field line. For Mike Riley, this is his 2nd World Series appearance. He's been a Major League umpire for 15 years.
In the last game of last year's American League Championship Series, Mike Riley ran Cito Gaston. We talked to Cito about it before. He said that was done last year, and no problem with Mike Riley, a very fair umpire and a good umpire. And he'll be behind the plate tonight.
And for the casual baseball fan, when you say he ran Cito Gaston, you don't mean that he put him through laps in the outfield before or after the game.
Nor used him as a pinch runner.
That's right.
No.
You mean that he ejected him from the ball game. That was in the 2nd.